Hey Minot, 2020 is the year for more. Yes, it's the U.S. Census season, and with it, Minot could see more. More opportunities for business, more federal funding for roads, for our schools, and for our community. Take part in something more. Take the census, because for us, more means more. Visit minotnd.org to learn more.
Pulling the second time? Yes, coming off. I think it might make sense to put that one shoulder in the new and old council. So first reading with the old council and second reading with the new council, just as sort of a double affirmation of the whole thing. Might have been. Yeah.
Are they on you?
Yeah. My wife tells me, "Oh, do you have anything going on?" "No, I can drop you off. I can pick up the kids today. Yeah, I got nothing going on." I must have completely missed the email saying that I was on the. You know what? They'll meet again in 8 years, right? Catch the next. Yeah. All right, that's good.
Call the meeting of the Minot City Council to order for today, Monday, May 18th, 2020. It is 5:30. Once again, ask everyone to check their electronic devices to make sure that they're on vibrate or silent. We'll keep the distractions down to a minimum. Roll call, please.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Padragula.
Here.
Straight.
Here.
Wolski.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we jump into the Planning Commission report for this evening, I do have a couple of proclamations, and rather than waiting until the very end, if the council doesn't have any disagreements, to take care of those right away. The first one is the Minot Mayor proclaims May 17th through the 23rd as the National Public Works Week, whereas the public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facility services that are of vital importance to sustainability and resilient within our community and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being to the people of Minot. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, our water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for its citizens, civic leaders, and children in Minot to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and the public works program in their respective communities. Whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual of the National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association, now therefore do I, Sean Sitma, the Mayor of Minot, hereby designate the week of May 17th through the 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week, and I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies and activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make and work to protect our national health, safety, and quality of life. So thank you to Public Works. The second proclamation I'm actually making this one in advance so that, once again, we don't have an appreciation day that is announced at the end of the day. So this one is anticipation of May 20th. City of Minot Mayor proclaims May 20th as Daycare Appreciation Day. Whereas the coronavirus pandemic of 2020 has dramatically altered otherwise normal operations for schools, businesses, and individuals in our community, and whereas securing safe and affordable daycare services is one of the greatest concerns for working parents in our and other communities, especially those who work as first responders or in other careers deemed as essential during the global pandemic. And whereas the City of Minot partnered with Minot Public Schools, the Learning Tree, to establish daycare services for the children of first responders and others classified as essential workers to allow those employees to remain on the job as part of the ongoing efforts to protect and serve our community during this time of crisis. Whereas Minot Public School provided space, food services, and personnel from its Community Learning Center after-school program to ensure the daycare services were available, and the Learning Tree provided guidance, direction, and oversight of the program. Now, therefore, do I, Sean Sitma, the mayor of Minot, hereby proclaim May 20th, 2020 as Daycare Appreciation Day and encourage members of the community to join me in expressing our most sincerest gratitude to Minot Public Schools, its CLC and food service workers, and the Learning Tree for stepping forward in the time of great uncertainty to take care of our essential workers' most precious assets, their children, and to recognize their continued efforts to promote and protect the community's safety, health, and well-being during this ongoing global crisis. Mayor proclamation, May 20th, 2020. So I do want to express once again my great gratitude towards those great folks, and May 20th being also the last day of school is once again the last day of our emergency daycare operation. So I can't say thank you enough to everyone who stepped forward with helping with that. Let's continue on with our agenda for this evening, the report of the Planning Commission. We do have a number of items for consideration this evening. The first three are public hearings. 3.1, a public hearing, Ramstead Heights, 7th edition. A public hearing to consider an application by Four Seasons Construction Incorporated, owner, and Ackerman Surveying and Associates Incorporated, applicant to rezone Ramstead Heights, 7th edition from R4 Planned Residential District to R1S Single Family Residential District with small lot flexibility. The first and second approved a subdivision of property described as Lot 8A through 14B, Block 2, Statesboro Edition, to create a 7-lot subdivision to be known as the Ramstead Heights 7th Edition. And the second recommendation is to pass an ordinance on first reading to change the zone from an R4 Planned Residential District to R1S Single Family Residential District with small lot flexibility. Again, this is a public hearing, and I would look to our city clerk to see if we had any submissions for any comments on our public hearings.
Mayor Sitma and the rest of the city council, we have not received any comments.
And there were no comments that were received at the Planning Commission, as I was able to watch that online as well for consideration. So with that, I would look to the council for recommendation. Alderman Janser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move that we close the public hearing and approve the item.
A motion to close the public hearing and to approve the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Straight. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson. Yes. Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. Motion is approved. 3.2 is another public hearing, Ramstead Heights 8th edition. A public hearing to consider an application by Four Seasons Construction Incorporated, owner, and Ackerman Surveying and Associates Incorporated, applicant to rezone Ramstead Heights 8th edition from R4 Planned Residential District to R1S Single Family Residential District with small lot flexibility. The two recommendations before us are the subdivide property described as Lot 10A through 18B, Block 7, Statesboro Edition, to create a 9-lot subdivision to be known as Ramstead Heights 8th Edition, and 2, pass an ordinance on first reading to rezone Ramstead Heights 8th Edition from R4 Planned Residential District to R1S Single Family Residential District with small lot flexibility. Again, the acknowledgement that there were no submissions for any public hearing on our online platform, either tonight or at the Planning Commission. I would look for a motion. Alderman Straight.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to close the public hearing and approve the item.
Motion to close the public hearing and to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion is approved. 3.3 is another public hearing, the Ramsted Heights 9th edition. A public hearing to consider an application by Four Seasons Construction Incorporated, owner, and Ackerman Surveying and Associates, the applicant, to rezone the Ramsted Heights 9 edition from R4 Planned Residential District to R1S Single Family Residential District with the small lot flexibility. The two recommendations before us are subdivide the property described as lots 1A through 13B, Block 8 Statesboro's addition, to create a 14-lot subdivision to be known as Ramsted Heights 9th Edition. Second recommendation is to pass the ordinance on first reading to rezone the Ramsted Heights 9th Edition from R4 Planned Residential District to R1S Single Family Residential District with small lot flexibility. And again, we do not have any submissions for tonight from our online submission or from Planning Commission earlier this week. I would look for a motion. Alderman Straight.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to close the public hearing and approve the item.
Second.
Motion to approve by Alderman Straight, second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion approved. 3.4 is the subdivision of Galmac Second Edition. The recommendation that the City Council approve a subdivision to combine three existing lots described as lots 14 through 16 and the west 13 feet lot 17, Galmac subdivision of Elbow Park Manor Edition, to create one lot subdivision to be known as Galmac Second Edition.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Janser for approval.
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. Alderman Wolski, you had asked specifically for this one for discussion.
I did, Mayor Sitma, thank you. Some comments, and ultimately I won't be supporting this tonight. And that's obviously, if I were to put myself in the applicant's position, I would very likely be here asking for the same. But I'm not in the applicant's position. I'm in the city officer's position. And from that perspective, I think this type of planning development is the wrong direction for a couple of reasons. One, this is the opposite of infill development, which we have talked about here for several years. Two, this is, I think, contrary to a goal that many of our citizens have, which is lowering property taxes. The way we do that is to increase revenue while holding costs level. But this particular project prevents developable property from being developed and thus adding value to it. And I think these two ideas, the idea of property rights and property taxes, are not always in perfect alignment with each other. And I think at some point, we, the council, are going to have to reconcile those priorities. For me, that begins tonight. I can't support this.
Any further discussion on the motion to approve? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
No.
Wolski,
No.
Sitma.
Yes. Motion approved. 3.5 is the subdivision of the Bluffs 13th Edition, lots 1A and 1B. Recommendation to council tonight is the council approve the subdivision to adjust the lot lines between lots 5A and 5B, Block 4, Bluffs 2nd Edition, by creating proposed Bluffs 13th Edition, lot 1A and 1B.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Olson to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Janser. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion approved. 3.6 is the SRT lots 1 and 2, SRT edition lots 1 and 2. Two recommendations before council tonight is recommend the city council approve a subdivision to combine a portion of lot 6 and 7 and all of lot 1, Jack's 4th edition, to create lot 1. Second recommendation is to pass an ordinance on first reading to annex lot 1 into the city of Minot's corporate limits.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Janser to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. Any discussion on the motion? Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, a question for our planning director, community planning and development director. Mr. Billingsley, I'm just curious as to why wouldn't we just annex all of this into city limits at this point?
Mayor Sitma, members of the council, the applicant who owns Lot 2 is not ready to develop that parcel at this time. In the future, when they are ready to develop, they probably will submit a subdivision plat if they intend on splitting it into multiple lots, and they will have to annex before they receive city services anyhow. So they'll annex in the future when they're ready to develop.
Just a brief continuance. I only bring it up because it feels to me, and I may have been reading the map wrong, but it feels like this is sort of an island of non-annexed territory inside a much larger area where it's all city around it. So it seems a little strange to leave those islands, stay islands when we have an opportunity.
Yes.
Any further questions for our planning? Thank you, Mr. Billingsley.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. Motion approved. That takes us to our consent agenda items. This is 4.1 through 4.11. Are there any individual items that need to be pulled for consideration? Alderman Padragula.
Number 5.
4.5. Any other items? Alderman Janser.
Mayor, seeing none, I would move approval on or consent on the remainder of the items.
Motion consent on all items except for 4.5 within section 4. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes, motion approved. 4.5 is the Southwest Elevated Water Tower Award of Bid, project number 4405. A new elevated water tower has been in the planning stages since 2006 to address the growth in Southwest Minot and water demands as well as the institutional fire flow needs. This project was included in the 2019-20 CIP. The new project is, the project is the construction of a new 1.5 million gallon water tower to be located on the existing site the city owns and purchased for this purpose in 2006 and 2007. On Tuesday, May 12th, 2020, Public Works Department opened bids for the water tower project. There were 3 bidders, and they are as follows: Landmark Structure at $3,967,000, Caldwell at $5,152,000, and Phoenix at $4,866,780. The 4 recommendations before us are the recommendation for the council to approve a bid from Landmark Structures in the amount of $3,967,000 for the Southwest Elevated Water Tower project. 2, to authorize the mayor to sign the contract documents for the project. 3, authorize the Public Works Director to sign the notice to proceed. And 4, pass an ordinance on the first reading amending the budget to increase the water supply and treatment capital purchases expenditures for the award of the Southwest Water Tower project. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Padragula. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Straight. Alderman Padragula.
I had a question for our engineer or public works person, whoever is shepherding this through. Thanks, Dan. How much was the engineer's estimate on this?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Padragula, the engineer's estimate was around $3,820,860. It's about $150,000 under the low bidder.
So the low bid is more than the engineer's estimate?
Yes, it's about $150,000 over the engineer's estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Alderman Straight?
Dan, do we have any experience working with Landmark?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Straight, they've done actually the last 2 water towers for us in town. The one on North Hill that's painted orange and white, and also the one out in the east side of town out on 72nd Street. So they, like I said, we have experience with them. They've done a good job for us on both towers.
Thanks, Dan.
Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, thank you. Dan, goofy question that occurs to me here, right on the spot, but the new tower on the northwest side of town, we had to paint its configuration because of the airport. Do we have the opportunity to have a little more fun with this water tower?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Wolski, you can have as much fun as you want. Right now, it's going to be painted blue with the city of Minot on it.
Okay.
And that's about as much fun as Public Works folks make out of like that. We're kind of dull.
I just bring it up because I feel like these are opportunities for community art in some way, and so I don't know if there's time to do something creative with that, but if there is, I think we should explore those types of ideas.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Wolski, we certainly can. I'm sure we could add something to it, but keep in mind, just to get our logo put on there is about an additional $10,000 to $20,000. So when you start adding artsy things to it, it gets real expensive.
We'll keep it abstract.
Any further questions for Public Works Director? Thank you, Dan. Any further discussion? Alderman Patagula.
Thank you. Just a comment. I know it's in the Public Works plan, but when we get these big-ticket items especially, I guess it'd really help me if we had an idea of what the engineer's estimate is and not have to go back leafing for, what those were. I think it's good we have a sense of how things compare with the predictions. For a while there, we had a good run where the costs, the bids were quite a bit below predictions, but that would really help me evaluate these kinds of projects. I'd ask us to do that, please.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Motion approved. That takes us to section 5 of our agenda this evening. It is the action items. 5.1 is consider the report from the Franchise Committee. The Franchise Committee met earlier this afternoon prior to council meeting to consider an ordinance on first reading relating to the gas distribution franchise for Montana Dakota Utilities Company. The recommendation to the City Council is to affirm the recommendations from the Franchise Committee. I would look to Alderman Olson, who chaired that committee.
Mr. Mayor, I would move approval on this item.
Alderman Olson, motion to approve, second by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion? Alderman Patagula.
Right. I certainly don't want to hold this up, but as I said at the Franchise Committee, it seems there are some inconsistencies in terms of what utilities we charge franchise fees for. For example, on my cable TV, I think I pay a little bit over $6 a month as a franchise fee. I'm not suggesting this necessarily as a way of getting income, although I think that's certainly a factor. But the point is that the city provides services because of the utilities that run through the city and we give franchises to. And I think there should be some way of recouping that. So I'd like to ask the administration at some point, maybe within this next year, to look at this issue, to give us some ideas as to what other cities do that are similar to ours, to outline some of the policy issues, and to try to address this question of why some are charged and not others. The example I gave at the Franchise Committee was over the winter I was walking in Oak Park and there was a downed line of some sort over the path. And I felt that was a hazard. I called it in to the central dispatch people, and they sent out the nearest fire truck, which happened to be our $1 million ladder truck with 4 firefighters, and took them maybe 20, 30 minutes to make sure that things were safe. And it ended up being the cable TV company that came, it was their wire, to take care of it. So we had an expensive piece of equipment tied up. And I think the city needs to get some compensation for those kinds of calls. They're routine. And I'm not suggesting that in any way the utilities are acting inappropriately or unsafely. I think we have a very good record in our state, actually, compared to some other states. But the point is that the city spends money on taking care of things and costs associated with right-of-ways and services that are provided to our residents. So I'd like to see the staff take a look at that, either as part of the budget process or perhaps as a longer-term study when we're done with the budgeting, because I think that's an issue. We also are trying very hard, I think, to make our fees current. At one point, I think we hadn't increased residential inspection fees for 26 years. And when there's an increase, there's a big sticker shock. And I think if we balance things out more, these fees here and there, it'll be less onerous to the public, and particularly will help keep the property tax load down. So I would ask that the staff look at that issue sometime this year.
Thank you, Alderman Patagul. I would only just perhaps acknowledge that on my cell phone fee and a number of others, you see service fees that are associated with that, as these companies rarely ever just eat those franchise fees, and it's just passed on to the consumer. So it's just a matter of where it's paid at.
Exactly.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion approved. 5.2 is Developers Agreement, Ramstead Heights 7th. This is item 4519, or the agreement 4519. Ramstead Heights 7th edition was approved by the Planning Commission on May 5th and is on the May 18th council agenda for approval. The Developers Agreement details the expectations and responsible parties relating to the development of the subdivision. The recommendation before us is to approve the Ramstead Heights 7th edition Developers Agreement with Four Seasons Construction, Inc., and authorize the mayor to sign.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Straight to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This takes us to item 5.3. This is the short extension of the daycare services agreement. On March 26, 2020, the City Council approved a service agreement with Resser LLC, doing business as the Learning Tree, to provide a daycare service for emergency personnel. The term of that agreement originally was to expire April 20th, 2020, but was previously amended to extend the term to May 18th, 2020. The attached proposed amendment extends the term to May 20th, 2020. Two recommendations before us is City Council approve the Second Amendment to the Services Agreement with Resser LLC, doing business as the Learning Tree, and two, pass the ordinance amendment to the 2020 annual budget to increase the emergency fund professional service contract expenditure for the emergency personnel child care services and approve the use of the emergency fund cash reserve.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Olson to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Straight. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Just take this moment once again to acknowledge, appreciate all of the other folks that have assisted with us, including Minot Public Schools for their facility and providing lunches, and the CLC folks that really brought this all together. So, seeing no other discussion, please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion approved. 5.4 was pulled from our agenda this evening to get some updated language, and will be on subsequent meeting agenda, so that we will move on to 5.5. The interim city manager temporary salary increase. Due to the termination of the former city manager, Mr. Lakefield has been asked to assume the interim duties of that position until a permanent replacement has been hired. As such, it is recommended that Mr. Lakefield be afforded a temporary 10% monthly increase to his salary for additional duties and responsibilities. This recommendation increase is similar to the one approved for Cindy Hemphill when she was assumed the role of the interim city manager April of 2014 and August of 2016. Alderman Straight.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the item, but I would like to amend the motion to backdate it to the time that Mr. Lakefield had to fill in for
You can make that just a point of your motion.
Yep. So I would, Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the item with an amendment that the date would be reflected to the point that the acting city manager had stepped in to fill in, which would be April 20th of 2020. Thank you, Ms. Matulka.
Second. Motion and a second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion approved. 5.6 is the Special Assistant City Attorney's Legislative Services. City of Minot has previously retained Shane Gettle to provide legal services for the purpose of handling state government affairs and to advise and consult as needed and requested on the interface of local, state, and federal resources associated with flood recovery and protection and city growth associated with energy impacts. The agreement before the City Council also includes managing other projects as assigned. Two recommendations that are before us this evening: to move to approve the authorize the mayor to sign the consulting and legal services agreement between the City of Minot and Shane Gettle, and two, to move to continue to the appointment of Shane Gettle and Lance Anderson as special assistant city attorneys.
Mr. Mayor, just a correction, Lacey Anderson.
I'm sorry. I stand corrected with Lacey. Thank you for that correction. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Janser, second by Alderman Olson. Discussion on the motion. Alderman Wolski.
Mayor Sitma, this is a particular budget line that I have questioned in the past, going back to, I think, initially the 2018 budget, which was the first I voted on. And I was convinced at that time to support it and leave it in the budget. This last legislative session, 2019, was the one in which I really saw the true and full value of what having Mr. Gettle in Bismarck brings to the table in terms of preparation and logistics in front of testimony and just a number of other benefits that I have grown to appreciate. I get asked about this one pretty often by members of the public, and I think we're all right to question these lines when we see them, but this is one where I have become a true believer in the value that we're getting from this, and I'm going to be very supportive of it this evening.
Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to say that when you hear that for Alderman Wolski, you should take that as a very serious statement of affirmation, Mr. Gettle. So thank you for your service. And just conferring with the city clerk, I did want to confirm that there is no increase in the fees proposed under the extended contract. With Mr. Gettle, it's kind of staying as it was from June of 2020 through December 31st of 2020. And so I just wanted to confirm that for the general public that might be curious regarding the fees Mr. Gettle is earning.
I would answer, as I'm getting the head nod from our city attorney, that the fees are exactly what they were on the previous contract term. Ms. Hendershot, if you have any further to add.
Just for clarification there, the same fees that were in the original one as well. They haven't gone up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Also working with Mr. Gettle, I would reaffirm with Alderman Wolski and even go further for the folks that wonder on the off legislative years where Mr. Gettle stays in constant contact with our staff and with myself and other elected officials, as in the off season is where a lot of the different bills and legislative, let's say, dealings really start to take shape long before it ever reaches Bismarck. Even having conversations today on a lot of the COVID impacts on what is coming. So there is going to be a tremendous need for those services in the upcoming legislative session. I expect Mr. Gettle will earn every penny that he charges and probably more as we work towards and through this next legislative session. So I absolutely will be supporting this as well. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. Motion approved. That takes us into our next section, personal appearances. As we only have staff and media in the room, this would be a point where we do have members from the community that would come forward. I will wait for, once we get into miscellaneous discussion items, to talk about that a little bit further. But for now, we'll just move on to item number 7, which is miscellaneous and discussion items. We do have one item specifically, 7.1, and this is the First District Health Unit contract amendment. The amendment will remove the 6-month reporting requirement from the current contract with First District Health Unit. Look for a motion. I might speak on this just a bit.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that.
Motion by Alderman Janser for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Olson. As we have been progressing through the COVID-19, different Joint Information Center press conferences, I've had an opportunity to speak with Lisa from First District Health Unit on a number of occasions. They had put in and implemented the process to get their reporting requirements in place, and then COVID hit. And all of their different vaccines or vaccination programs and schedules went right out the window. So we had reached an agreement that after COVID-19, we would look to get the reporting back on the schedule, but after their annual report, and a lot of the COVID-19 issue has moved on. So given the fact that their priority is somewhere else right now, I felt it prudent to agree to that and have it brought forth to the council, looking for those numbers in their annual report rather than taking people away from COVID-19 right now to compile some data. Alderman Walski.
Mayor Sitma, I applaud the effort to expedite the most important work at this particular point. I would just say that in the future, it would be important to me to see the annual report or the biannual report. I think biannual is probably even appropriate, given the amount that we support First District Health to, which is, I'm not sure if it was 250 or 350,000. It's a considerable amount of money, and I think when we are making those investments, I think we have not an expectation, but maybe an obligation to ask those organizations to come back and report to us in terms of what we are getting when we make those investments. So fully supportive of this tonight, but let's not forget about it and let it go in the future.
Thank you, Alderman Walski. And that was a point that she even made, that they had stood up the program to help identify specific to Minot with that. But it would take such an effort with COVID. And unfortunately, a lot of those vaccine clinics and specifics that otherwise would be in that just aren't happening right now. But as it is a contract, we can certainly stand that back up after the annual report. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma.
Yes. Motion approved. This takes us to 7.2. This is the 2020 census update. Mr. Brian Billingsley here from Community Development Director, Planning Department formerly, is here for the latest numbers on where we sit for the 2020 census. Good evening, Mr. Billingsley.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Alderman. I'm here tonight to present our relaunch strategy for the 2020 census. If you recall, last November, December, I came before this body and presented our original strategy, and that strategy has pretty much been thrown into the garbage ever since the COVID-19 struck in about mid-March. So I've pretty much, for the last couple of months, been sitting back and trying to do everything I can from a social distancing standpoint to encourage census participation. Our original goals for this project were to, number one, achieve a complete count for the city of Minot. For each resident that we count, the state of North Dakota receives $1,900 a year of federal funding that funds highway construction projects, Head Start programs, education programs, et cetera. So it's important that we count every person that we can in the city of Minot because of the federal funding that can flow into the city. Also, it's important because the representation we can have down in Bismarck in the state legislature as well. We also want to exceed the 50,000 population threshold. By doing that, we can be eligible to receive CDBG Community Block Grant funding for this city. I work for a city in Idaho that hit the 50,000 population threshold in 2014, and we were eligible for $425,000 a year of federal funding. So it's important that we come as close to as possible as 50,000 or exceed that number. We also wanted to assist Minot State University and the Minot Air Force Base with awareness and outreach. Count all the oil field workers, count all the snowbirds. There are a lot of transient residents living in Minot, people that may bounce from one place to another. And it's our goal to try to get as many of those people counted as residents of Minot and North Dakota as possible. And then, of course, the last thing was we were going to encourage participation in the census by having these kiosks rotate around the community for a few months and try to get as many people counted as possible. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Our original budget for this year was $25,000 was budgeted for census promotion. We also were fortunate to receive $8,700 in state funding from the North Dakota Department of Commerce. We used $5,000 of that funding to put the advertisements in all the sanitation trucks and the buses. $2,300 went towards the grocery bag inserts you probably saw at Marketplace Foods that they're handing out. And $1,400 went to door hangers that the Magic City Apartment Association was handing out, put in on all the doors of all the apartments around the city. Our outreach efforts were to do as much print, radio, and social media advertising as possible. Obviously, the transit and sanitation vehicle advertising that I just spoke about. Mobile and permanent kiosk census locations, print materials, banners, posters, flyers. And then we were going to have a Census Day event on April 1st, which obviously was canceled because of the virus. So this is what the advertisements look like on the sanitation trucks. Again, I think they're on 7 sanitation vehicles and 1 city bus, and the $5,000 grant paid for the advertising. And we're charged $450 a month out of our $25,000 at the city for this advertising. So we're getting a pretty good deal. These vehicles are traveling all around Minot 5 days a week, or at least 4 days a week, if not 5. And I think we're getting a pretty good deal in terms of getting the message for the census out and reminding people to participate in the census and not waste the opportunity. Here's a picture of the mayor at Marketplace Foods around the middle of March after the census opened. The census began on March 12th, and this is one of the 3 mobile kiosks that we had set up around the city. They operated for 4 days, and the one that was at this location, we were able to get about 35 people signed up for the census over those 4 days. Unfortunately, people were too worried about toilet paper at that time rather than participating in the census. I worked a 4-hour shift, and I must have saw at least 5,000 rolls of toilet paper go before me. So they were more concerned about getting the toilet paper and getting out of there. Some people didn't want to touch the tablet because they were afraid of the virus. So we try to encourage as many people to go home and participate in the census as possible. These were all the products we had printed. So the first column is total items that were printed: banners, posters, flyers, door hangers, bookmarks, grocery bag inserts, stickers, flyers, etc., aprons and T-shirts. The numbers that were distributed, and again, as soon as we shut down census activities, we quit distributing supplies around the community, and then our current inventory that's remaining. So we were able to get out most of our inventory during the months of February and probably the first half of March.
Brian?
Yes, sir.
In terms of what we have for remaining inventory, do we have a way does the Census Bureau allow us to sort of break down certain parts of time where we have better traction than others, so we might be able to apply our remaining resources into areas that are maybe a little behind the mean in some form?
Mayor Sitma, Alderman Wolski, yes, I'll get to that a little bit later, okay? Okay, here's our census budget for the $25,000 that we had set aside for promoting the census. So far, we have spent about $13,000 of that money, so about a little bit over half of that money has been spent so far. So thankfully, receiving that $8,700 from the state of North Dakota has helped reduce the burden, and we still have some monies left over to help promote the census. The census timelines. The census began on March 12th, and of course, we met that deadline, of course. And so they've been taking submission since March 12th. They were supposed to begin delivery of census forms to homes on March 16th. There is a federal law that prohibits census forms being placed in post office boxes. So the Census Bureau is required to submit those forms, hand deliver them to homes. We estimate that there's about 10% of all the homes in the state of North Dakota receive their census receive their mail through a PO box. So I don't know how many of those people live in Minot, but the numbers could be as high as 10%. It could be over, it could be less. I'm not sure. So there is a substantial number of people out there who may have not even received a census form yet. Fortunately, last week on May 11th, they're supposed to start going back around and hand delivering these forms door to door throughout all the cities in the state. The enumerators were scheduled to visit the households on May 12th. That has been pushed back to August 11th. So we have almost 3 months before they're actually going to start going door to door and try to get information for people who did not self-participate in the census. The last day to respond has also been extended. It was July 31st. It's now been pushed back to October 31st. So the good news is we still have 5.5 months to get these people counted, the ones who have not signed up yet. So we have a lot of time in front of us. And the census is required to be delivered to the president by December 31st. He has extended that deadline, and it's probably going to be delivered around April of 2021. So we're not going to know if we're going to hit the 50,000 threshold for almost a full year. Here's a snapshot of the response rates nationwide. To our east, Minnesota has the highest response rate in the country. They just eclipsed 70%. To our west, Montana has one of the lowest rates in the country. They barely just hit 50%. Alaska actually has the lowest. They're still in the 40s, I believe, maybe in the 30s, I'm not sure. But it's kind of interesting that to our east, we have the state with one of the highest rates, and to our west, with a state with one of the lowest rates. So I think South Dakota is ahead of us by about 0.5 point. We're almost neck and neck with South Dakota right now. Here's a snapshot of response rates by counties. And as you can see, just like in Minnesota, our highest response rates are in the blue. So they're all mostly just on the east side of the state. And our lowest response rates are on the west side of the state in the beige and orange colors. Ward County is in the 57 to 62% range. I think they're right about 60 or 61% right now. Here are response rates for all the cities, for all the major cities in the state. It's kind of interesting to see Harwood and Argusville, two small towns in Cass County, are up near 90%. In fact, they're in the top 20 in the country right now in terms of response rates. And if you go down to the bottom part of the category, the cities in the western part of the state are very low. Williston is not even over 50% yet. Watford City's at 31%, Tioga 21%, and Tioga's defense, there are actually cities with lower response rates than 21%. So right now, Minot's response rate, and these figures are from yesterday, Minot's response rate is 62.3%. Which is a little bit lower than we were in 2010, but obviously I think the virus has had quite an impact on response rates. We're right there with Fargo. The Fargo is just barely in front of us. We're tied with Devil's Lake. Bismarck and Mandan have come in pretty strong at 72 and 68%. So Minot has the third highest response rate of all the cities in the western half of the state. Dickinson is just slightly behind us. The response rate, the nationwide response rate is at 59.5%, so we're about 3 points ahead of the nationwide rate, and we're 3.5 points in front of the state rate at 58.8%. So we're doing better than the national and statewide rates. Here is a self-response rate for yesterday. These are broken down by census tracts. So the highest response rates are in the dark blue colors. In the southwest part of the city, the highest response rate is at 75%. So 3 out of 4 households have responded in that area. The west side of the city is pretty strong, 67.9%, 65.7%. That includes the university. So the university is doing pretty well at 65%, that neighborhood. and then 71.5%. The areas that could use some improvement are in downtown Minot, 53.5%. The southeast parts of the city, there are 2 census tracts that are in the 50s, one at 51%, one at 56.3%, and then on the northwest side of the city, we have one at 58.6%. And it's kind of interesting to know that this is the first census where you can participate online. So far, 89.1% of all responses in the city of Minot have come from online responses. So about 9 out of 10 people are signing up on the internet. This is Minot Air Force Base. The base itself is at 40%. I checked out the base at Grand Forks, and it's right around the same range too. So the base rates are kind of low. The good news is that the residential neighborhood north of the base is at 62.3%. One thing I was told by the Census Bureau was the Census Bureau and the military are going to be working on making sure all bases are counted. And they've kind of delayed that project thanks to COVID-19, but their plan is to have every military base fully counted. And they're going to, so the federal workers at the Census Bureau are going to be working with the military leaders to make sure they get accurate counts of the bases. So that's good news there. We've done some advertising in the Northern Century, which is the newspaper for the air base. And that's a sample advertisement there on the left that we've printed in their newspaper. Last year in 2010, the Air Force Base at the end of May had a 54.3% response rate. This year, again, it's down at 40, so it's down there. But the good news, we've already exceeded the figure for the residential neighborhood to the north, where it was 58% in 2010. We've already exceeded that at 62.3% in 2020. So the upcoming census purchases, this is what we plan on spending the remaining monies on that are in our budget. We're going to extend our radio advertising. We're going to keep going on with social media advertising. We would like to extend the transit and sanitation vehicle advertising for a few more months since the census has now been extended into October. We want to print some more grocery bag inserts and pizza box stickers as well. Those were very successful in terms of getting the messaging out. And we'd like to talk to Public Works about putting in some inserts or some messaging in our water bills, and they get around, maybe we can get that done sometime over the summer to help remind people to participate in the census. So when we relaunch our census, what we want to do is we want to take those remaining grocery bag inserts and take them to the gas stations and convenience stores located in the census tracts with the lowest population participation rates. And hopefully they'll spread them around the neighborhoods and help increase participation rates in those poorly performing census tracts. We want to distribute the pizza box stickers to the most popular pizza delivery stores in Minot. We ordered 10,000 of those stickers, and it only cost $700 to produce 10,000 stickers, so that's a pretty good deal that we had received there. We want to place the remaining door hangers we have in households within census tracts with the lowest self-response rates. And then these are all to be determined because we're going to wait for the governor and health officials and the Census Bureau to give us some guidance first. But we eventually want to reopen the census kiosks and try to get more people signed up for the census. We want to go out to the oil field worker safety meetings. That was our original plan, to try to get oil field workers to get signed up for the census as North Dakota residents rather than as residents of other states. And then we're hoping to have, if the schools are back in session in the fall, we'd like to have a back-to-school census block party to try to get more people signed up for the census at that party. So the kiosk locations, we're going to place them at Marketplace Foods, Cashwise, all the food banks and soup kitchens throughout the city, the Minot Housing Authority properties, the churches, and we were hoping to also use the fall registration periods at Minot Public Schools and Minot State University to try to help get people signed up for the census when they're registering for school. For those of you at home who have not signed up for the census, it's very easy. This is how you do it. You go to my2020census.gov and click the link that says Start Questionnaire. If you have your 12-digit ID from the Census Bureau, you can enter it on step number 2. If you do not have that ID, that's okay. Just click the link below where it's circled in yellow, and it'll take you to this third page. And basically, all you have to do is acknowledge that your address is somewhere within the United States or the District of Columbia. You hit that button, and you move to the next page. On step 4, all you have to do is enter your address, confirm your address, and you can get signed up. It takes 5 to 10 minutes to sign up for the census. It's very easy. And I encourage everyone who has not signed up to just, as soon as this meeting is over, please sign up and help our city and our state with federal funding. The Census Bureau is still looking for people to work as census workers. Unfortunately, because of the delays in the scheduling for the census, they're losing workers because they're hoping that this would be a good summertime job for them. Now they're not going to start until August. So it seems like every time they're gaining workers, they're also losing workers too. And these jobs pay $18 an hour to start. So if you're looking for some extra work, you can go to their website, 2020census.gov/jobs, or their phone number is 1-855-562-2020. So I'd like to finish by thanking all these organizations and groups. The Census Bureau has been extremely helpful to me. I've never chaired a complete count committee before, so they've been a great resource. And the North Dakota Department of Commerce, of course, with providing the grant funding to the city. Obviously, the City Council and the Mayor for your support, I appreciate it. The Minot Chamber of Commerce has been extremely helpful in getting some of our materials and banners put out there. Visit Minot's been helpful with scheduling events. Unfortunately, they all had to be canceled, but if we can reopen up these kiosks, they'll be very helpful with scheduling summer and fall-time events for us. The Minot Board of Realtors, they were going to help us with a kiosk for a week. I want to appreciate them and for at least volunteering to help. Same with the Ministerial Association was going to bring the kiosks around to all the churches. We had it scheduled. They were going to have them on the weekends. Minot State University has been great to work with, along with the Air Force Base. Minot Public Schools, too. I'd like to thank all the vendors. For the printing projects, we submitted RFPs to 10 different companies around Minot. 9 of those 10 companies won projects. That's how many printing projects we had. So I'd like to thank them for their submittals. The Minot Area Builders, they gave us a free booth at the Home Garden Show back in March, free of charge, and I'd like to thank them for that booth space. Unfortunately, it was the weekend before the census opened, but we were able to get out a lot of materials out to the public and talk to them about the census. And the Magic City Apartment Owners Association, they're putting out the door hangers in all the apartments throughout the city. I want to acknowledge them and thank them as well. Derek, I want to thank you for all the work you've done with he's handled all the advertising. Anytime you've seen citywide advertising, whether it's on the radio or online, it was Derek Hackett who did that work. And of course, the Minot Public Library, they submitted all the bookmarks to all the libraries around the city, the school libraries and Minot State's Library. Minot Public Works for the advertising that they've done, I want to thank them. And all of our social service organizations, they've been great to work with, and they recognize the importance of the census and how it impacts their organization and their funding. So for those in the public who have questions about the census, who would like to help out with a kiosk site sometime this summer or fall, or have any questions at all, please give me a call or email me. Would be glad to help you or assist you in any way. And with that, Mayor and Council, I stand available for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Billingsley. And I would also like to remind folks at home that if it isn't the federal funding that has enough interest for them to go out and fill it out, this is also a benchmark for a lot of companies that consider on whether they're going to expand or potentially grow. And not being one of the 50,000 plus communities in North Dakota has been a challenge of ours. And I think that this is a benchmark that will certainly help us in the future, regardless of what COVID-19 looks like down the road. So it is another economic development standpoint that certainly would enable us as a community moving forward. Any questions for Mr. Billingsley? Thank you, sir. I appreciate all the hard
Thank you.
work, and certainly let us know if you need any assistance from any of us.
Will do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Last piece, actually, this is not even on the miscellaneous and discussion items, but I did want to at least mention, as the COVID-19 task force within the different department heads and myself, I've been working through what reopening of City Hall and other public buildings are going to be looking like. I would anticipate actually even getting some of that direction coming down from the state here in the next day, if not week, ahead of us. Unofficially, what we are looking at is in anticipation of early June right now. We do have a couple of security measures in place that we're going to have to get finished up, but the main components of this are just identifying, very much like was outlined in the Monmouth Daily News article that was submitted this weekend. Municipal court is reopened with a specific plan, very thoughtful, very direct in how and why when they do reopen. But I expect that to take shape here very quickly, and unless something substantially changes with COVID, that's what the expectations are moving forward. So there is a potential date in mind, and certainly that's also going to be brought forward to likely this council. I would hope within the next couple of weeks for input as well from the council for meetings and how that is going to look. So that is all the discussion I have for COVID-19. Alderman Walski.
Mayor Sitma, thank you. Just prior to the meeting, I distributed both a memo and a brochure to members of the City Council, a few of our department heads who are directly associated with this. For our members of the media here, I have copies for you as well. But two items that I'm going to put on our agenda for our June 1st meeting related to some NDR activities. We have a line item in our NDR related to ecological restoration. And it just so happens that in our not too distant past, we have passed intent to improve the dead loops within the city. This is a resolution we passed back in July of 2017. I see the NDR project, the ecological restoration line, and this redevelop the dead loops plan is very much aligned. We've been kind of looking for a purpose for some of that ecological restoration money, and I want us to consider that and take action on it. The second item is related to, again, some NDR planning money. We still have a few dollars left in that bucket. And over the past couple years at the Main Street Summit, I have been introduced to an organization and an individual. The organization is Strong Towns. You find it online at strongtowns.org. The individual is Chuck Marone. He's the president and founder of the organization. The little introduction that I delivered here, I wrote up. That isn't from their website. This is my impression of them. But I really do think of them as thought leaders in describing the factors that indicate why one place thrives and one place maybe merely survives. And I think this is very much in alignment with economic development, with resiliency. So I've forwarded this on to Mr. Zakian, so he'll have an opportunity to review all this. But come June 1st, I want us to consider these items, and I wanted you to all be aware of it this evening.
Thank you, Alderman Walski. Questions on that or any further discussion? Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, first of all, just back to the census real quick. I just wanted to thank Brian for all the work on getting that moving and maybe kickstart it again, and hopefully citizens of Minot have enough incentive to invest in their community by registering for the census. And I didn't wear my census shirt tonight. I'm breaking my streak here, but I wasn't able to get it through the wash quick enough from the weekend. So hopefully there's enough incentive. If not, I'd be willing to shave the mayor's head or Alderman Strade's head if we hit 50,000. I'll throw that out there as a challenge to the citizens of Minot.
I'd shave my face, but not my head.
Well, we'll see.
But, Alderman Pittner, I'll shave my head if we make 50,000.
If we hit 50,000, there we go. On a more serious note, I wanted to direct staff this evening for our June 1st meeting to bring some revisions to ordinances relating to the operational flow chart for the city of Minot. Not too long ago here, we had a report come from Attorney Patricia Munson, and there was a second recommendation at the end of that report in relation to the organizational chart or the order reporting. That's something that I know we've talked about in reports or studies or recommendations that we've received as a council in the past, and the fear is that some of these items get shelved and they never get touched again. And I'd not seen it on this agenda. I would just like to see something come before us, directive, maybe directing with HR, with the city attorney department. I'd like to see the city manager position. I'd like to see the finance director position, the city attorney position, be removed from that organizational flow chart of answering to the city manager. I'd like the HR director to answer to the city attorney. I feel that appropriate. If the city is at any sort of legal liability with an HR issue, I feel it appropriate to be handled by the legal department. There's a lot of discussion in regards to our organization and our structure, and if we need to revise it, if we need a triumvirate, if we need to change the system completely. And the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I don't agree that we need to change much at all. We can always improve. We can always make things better. But in reality, it wasn't the system that failed in this situation. It was us as individuals, some of us at the dais, lack of communication, a lack of transparency, and I think we can correct that going forward with some small tweaks. And I know I don't have my operational flow chart in front of me at this point, but I know there's a little dotted line that exists currently from the finance director answers to the city manager, a little dotted line that surpasses everybody and comes to the city council. Obviously, I don't know if this is doable, but I'd like there to be a dotted line from every city of minded employee to the city council. There's no reason that a department head or a city employee, a street maintenance worker or a sanitation worker, that they can't come to the city council with an issue. There's no reason that it has to go up. There's a chain of command, but there's no reason that if somebody has an issue that they can't come to us. My number is listed on the city website. My email is listed on the city website. I would encourage anyone and everyone to reach out to me with any kind of issue, and I'd like to see that that change be made relatively expeditiously. I believe that we have a city manager report once a month. I believe that it would be maybe alternate, and I'd be more than happy to work with the city departments on this. I think it'd be very wise to maybe have, especially in the times that we're in, have a finance report, maybe alternate with city manager report on a monthly basis. Again, my thoughts, I don't want to see this shelved because I want to learn from our past. If you don't learn from your past, you're doomed to repeat it, right? So again, I think there was human error in this situation in the past that we're dealing with, and the reason that this is coming in front of us, and I think we can learn from that, and I think we can become better from that. And I just want to put that out there so this doesn't go by the wayside, and we can make these improvements now.
Thank you, Alderman Pittner. And that discussion had been moving forward with a meeting that was to be planned likely with a couple of aldermen in the next week or so that anticipate to get some correspondence from staff and myself as far as a couple of aldermen to help shape what comes forward here for our next city council meeting. Alderman Wolski.
Just some comments on that. I think one of the things that I would ask for very specifically is a new reporting structure. I think Alderman Padragula alluded to this, but I'm going to be more direct in my language. A new reporting structure specifically for the city attorney, that the city attorney answers directly to the council. I think that was one of the critical changes that maybe was even identified in the past, and just for whatever reason, we didn't get it taken care of, but I think it's essential that we get that one taken care of, both in operation in the near future, if not immediately, and then also appropriately through ordinance as well, so that those structural changes are made permanent.
Certainly with a couple of aldermen working with staff, that has been identified as well. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. And one of the reasons I bring it up at this juncture is that right now we are looking for a possible replacement for our city manager position. I think it's very important that whoever's applying for that position, whether it be locally or nationally, they know what they're getting into. They know who they have under them as far as a staff. I believe that structure is important to have in place when somebody comes in versus coming in there to a fluid situation. Again, that's why I think that it's that the city attorney, like Alderman Wolski had said, city attorney answer to the city council, the finance director answer to the city council as well. We're about to go into a budget process. We're always in a budget process, right? I mean, it never ends, it seems. But again, they're the department that compile the budget and work with the department heads and do all the numbers, and then the city manager presents it to us. I think maybe cutting out the middleman may be a little bit more efficient in that way. We're all going to work together, right? We're all cogs in the same machine to move us forward. And I think just encouraging as much communication as possible. I've never had a problem reaching out to a department head and getting a response, and I want to make sure that a department head, if I'm out of line and saying something or I'm inaccurate, that they're not afraid to stand up at the podium and call me out on being wrong or misinformed. So I just want to encourage as much communication as possible. Or after the meeting, if you don't feel comfortable calling me out in person, I mean, tell me I'm wrong. I get told it a lot at home. So please, just again, communication. I think this is something that needs to be done a long time ago. Not in the future, but a long time ago.
Any final discussion for this evening for the Mr. Lakefield?
Mr. Mayor, apologize for dragging out the meeting here. I got some communication from the police chief who's not in attendance in person today. Item 4.7, second recommendation was to appoint a city council member to the executive board, and this was passed on consent. His question is if we have a council member in mind to be appointed, or if you would do that at a future date.
Well, we can certainly make an appointment even this evening. I would look to an alderman who is not up for re-election at this point. I'm looking around to see, we have Alderman Pittner, Alderman Janser, or Alderman Olson that is not up for re-election right now. Is there any interest in serving on that narcotics committee?
I'll throw my hat in the ring.
Alderman Pittner, is anybody going to contest that as far as consideration?
Or do I have to be nominated? I'm sorry.
Well, I would certainly offer up that recommendation for appointment, and that would require a vote. Alderman Straight.
Mr. Mayor, I would nominate Alderman Pittner to serve on the Narcotics Task Force.
Motion to approve, second by Alderman Wolski. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Alderman Straight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received a notice over the weekend from an individual who, this is an ongoing issue in our community. We have neighborhoods, we have issues that deal with the unfortunate reality of narcotics, drug trafficking, and so it's if I was going to serve on the council again, I would certainly volunteer for that position because it's certainly something that's necessary and needed. And Alderman Pittner, I commend you for stepping up. So thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to approve the appointment? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Straight,
Yes.
Wolski,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula.
Yes.
Motion approved. Thank you, Mr. Lakefield. Appreciate that for catching that out of the items that were in the consent. Any other discussion for the good of the order this evening? Seeing none, I would look to our final item, and that's adjournment for this evening. Motion to adjourn by Alderman Pittner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Janser. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.